now hand you over so that you can follow these proceedings live, courtesy of PBU and KBC. Quorum has been achieved.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. My question is the Cabinet Secretary aware that over 600 names and data of elderly persons in Tetu constituency aged more than 70 years were omitted in the registration for the elderly persons under the elderly persons cash transfer program? Question number 2, what measures has the ministry put in place to ensure that the said elderly persons in Tetu constituency are registered and paid their dues?
Very well. That one will be replied to before the Departmental Committee on Labor and Social Welfare. Next is the member for Kisumu West, Honorable Olaga Aluoch.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to ask question number 241 of 2019, directed to the CS for Interior and Coordination of National Government. 1, is the Cabinet Secretary aware that Kisumu, Kibos, Sia, and Eldoret prisons and Sikusa Boston Institution owe suppliers, mostly small local business people, sums amounting to over 200 million for the period 2012 to 2018. 2, is the Cabinet Secretary aware that funds were allocated in the last budget to clear these bills, but were not used for the same purpose? And 3, what steps is the Minister taking to ensure that these bills are paid? Mr. Speaker, with your permission, I wish to bring to your attention that when I filed this question, I annexed a 3-page annexure with names of 200 suppliers with sums totaling 206 million, because this would help the Cabinet Secretary knowing who he owes. But I've been informed by Table Office that it is not customary to attach these details to the question, but with your direction, the annexure will be submitted to the Cabinet Secretary when he is summoned to come.
I do not understand why we would require that annexure, because the question you've asked is fairly general. I do not know whether you are asking specifically, because if you did, then probably you would have put it in as part of the question. But anyway, I will have a look at it and see what we can be able to do with that particular one. Because I'm sure there is a likelihood that the person you're asking to come and reply would always know how much amount and to who it is owed. So let's wait and see what will come out of it. But let's have, I would want to have a look at what you have and see what we can do. Yes?
Yes. Mr. Speaker, the annexure is in the Table Office.
It is?
It is in the Table Office. It was submitted together with the question.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, well, this one will be replied to before the Departmental Committee on Administration and National Security. Let's go to the next one. That is the member for Funyula. That is Honorable Ojambo Oundo.
Thank you, Mr. Honorable Speaker. I rise to ask question number 249 of 2019 and directed to the Cabinet Secretary for Education. 1, is the Cabinet Secretary aware that members of Parliament received letters of invitation requesting students to apply for full scholarship with the Kenya Youth Education Scholarship Fund, via letter referenced number FIA/R/MP/3/18, titled Full Sponsorship Training for Diploma, dated 22nd March 2018, signed by one Lilian Nyarik on behalf of the Chief Executive Officer of the Foundation Institute of Africa. 2, is the Cabinet Secretary further aware that each student who applied for an offer of the scholarship was expected to pay Kenya shillings 16,500. And 3, could the Cabinet Secretary confirm whether the said college is registered and accredited with the ministry, what courses it has been approved to offer and train, and what action the ministry is intending to take against the said college and its promoters if found to be fraudulent? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Very well. That will be replied to before the Committee on Education and Research. And the other question which was to be asked by the Honorable Member for Teso South, Honorable Muse, he has requested that this matter be put to another date for reasons that are convincing, and therefore I order that it will be in the order paper in the next available opportunity. So let's proceed to the next order.
Order number 8, procedural motion, exemption of business from the provisions of Standing Order 43.
Leader of Majority Party.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that this House orders the business appearing as order number 9 in the order paper be exempted from the provisions of Standing Order 40, subsection 3, being a Wednesday morning, a day allocated for business not sponsored by the majority or the minority party, or business sponsored by a committee. Honorable Speaker, as the practice is, Wednesday mornings are meant for debate of private members' bills and their motions. However, there's a need for this House to finalize the budget debate, the budget for 2019-2020, a report which was tabled and is being discussed by the Budget and Appropriation Committee. And today being the third allocated day and the final day, because the standing orders provide that we must debate the Budget and Appropriation Committee report on the estimates and revenue for 3 days. And as tomorrow the Minister for the CS for National Treasury is supposed to come and address the House in line with the other East Africa Community member countries, he will need this report adopted and passed by the House to prepare his speech tomorrow. So it's important that we finalize this morning, and if possible, put the question in the afternoon, so that the minister then can have a copy of the decision of the House, because the powers of budget-making process lies with the National Assembly. So that's why we said we conclude item number 9 so that we deal with the estimates for the national government, for the judiciary, and for Parliament, so that next week again we will deal with the vote on account on every agency, every department, and every ministry. So I really want my colleagues to help me exempt that, so that we conclude the third day, which is allocated for the debate on the budget report tabled by the committee. And because I'm only seeing Honorable Makali Mulu, who was with me last night in the House Business Committee, I'm not seeing the other members, I will ask him to second from a position of his presence last night in the committee.
Yeah, thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I rise to second that proposal. Mr. Speaker, we know today is supposed to be private members' motions and bills. And this morning is the only time members have the opportunity to really debate their own motions and bills. But as the majority leader has said, Honorable Speaker, in addition to the budget estimates, I think as a House, we also have the supplementary budget, which we are supposed to be concluding. So this afternoon, it is planned that we are through the Supplementary Budget Appropriations Act. So we should be debating that bill, Mr. Speaker, and concluding on it, so that funds can be released to have this year, Mr. Speaker, conclude in terms of financial matters. So, Mr. Speaker, I really want to urge honorable members to support this motion, so that we have this morning to conclude the budget estimates, and then afternoon we can conclude on the supplementary estimates. That will allow this country really to move in terms of making sure that we have funds which will be spent for the remaining part of the year.
Okay.
With those remarks, Honorable Speaker, I second.
Very well. Before I propose the question, let me recognize in the Speaker's gallery Precious Blood Riruta Secondary School, Dagoretti North constituency of Nairobi. Thank you very much. I propose the question, which is that this House orders the business appearing as order number 9 in the order paper be exempted from provisions of Standing Order 43, being a Wednesday morning, a day allocated for business not sponsored by the majority or minority party, or a business sponsored by a committee. Honorable Pukosa is in the House, I guess. So That being the feeling of the House, I put the question, which is that the House orders the business appearing as Standing Order number 9 in the order paper be exempted from provisions of Standing Order 43, being a Wednesday morning, a day allocated for business, not sponsored by majority or minority party, or business sponsored by a committee. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 9, motion, report of the Budget and Appropriations Committee on the budget estimates for the financial year 2019-2020, general debate, third and final allotted day.
Very well. We will start with a member for Igembe Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this important motion, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, from the onset, I would say that this process is a national duty we are performing today, and what we are going through, so that at least we can please the country or give the okay for the country to spend the funds for the development of this country. Mr. Speaker, the budget process has been exclusively in the domain of the Minister of on the Treasury or the Minister of Finance, but with the current constitutional dispensation, Mr. Speaker, it has been given, the Parliament has been given the honors task of participating in this important exercise, Mr. Speaker. But having said that, Mr. Speaker, we need also, once we expedite or once we do our mandate as a Parliament, once we apportion funds to the ministries and to the bodies which need to spend this money, Mr. Speaker, this country is experiencing a lot of bottlenecks, especially when it comes to times of releasing funds to different projects, programs in this country. Until you find that, Mr. Speaker, we passed a budget last year, and to date, most of the funds are lying in the ministries. They have not been used. And at the end of the day, come that year, June, we will find that some ministries will have absorbed 50%, 60%, or even less than 50%, Mr. Speaker. And that is very unfair for the citizens of this country, because development cannot succeed, or we cannot move forward with that sluggish way of doing things, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, look at the issue of the CDF, which is apportioned to constituencies. As we talk, very few constituencies, if any, has received 60% of the allotment. And we are just closing the year. We have less than 20 days to go, and that money has not been released for projects which were earmarked to have been done as early as September last year, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you find that some ministries are having they are unable to absorb funds until the same funds go back to the ministries, because of the way the officers who are supposed to handle that money, the accounting officers in the ministries, they are so sluggish in getting money to go and do these projects, Mr. Speaker. This one, Mr. Speaker, I would attribute it mostly on corruption, where I have even some personal experience, Mr. Speaker, whereby funds were allocated to a road in my constituency, Mr. Speaker, in the last Parliament, and that money took 3 years for it to be dispensed or to be taken to do that project, because there were some unscrupulous officers who have been sitting on this money until they get a contractor who will give them their 10%, 5%, or whatever figure they want. Mr. Speaker, we talk of even donor funds, Mr. Speaker, which are already amounts which are bequeathed with the Treasury, and the money is there. But you find that the program will not take place because the person who is supposed to do the procurement exercise, the people who are supposed to evaluate, the people who are supposed to get the contractors, they don't go fast on that work to be done, because before they do that, they will have to sit somewhere in a back door in an hotel somewhere to make sure that they get their cut so that that one is done. Mr. Speaker, that is very unfair for this country, and therefore we passed this budget, but I urge the Treasury through the CS Treasury to see that if funds are been apportioned for any work, let it be done. Mr. Speaker, we have got even projects which have stalled, even in constituencies, especially the roads program, whereby contractors are unable to do their work, and the money is there. And the minister is there, the PS is there, and everybody is there. You go to Kera, to Kura, and Kena, you find that money is there, but nothing is being done because somebody somewhere wants to benefit before that work is expended, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, we are doing work in futility. Look, Mr. Speaker, look, we yesterday, we were talking of the supplementary budget. We should have come much earlier, but now we are doing it in the 11th hour, together with the next financial year's budget, because somebody somewhere is not frustrating this one. But when you go to the public, Mr. Speaker, to the electorate, to the citizens, they blame MPs, because everybody finds the MPs at fault, but they don't see what is the rot which is in our ministries and the officers inside there, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, in as much as we are talking of expediting, we should oversight critically, especially those committees which are charged to oversight the various ministries. We look into it to the extent that we see that if we have released the funds, let them go to their to their designated programs, and as early as possible, not in the 11th hour, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, next will be, I notice that the leader of majority has not spoken, and you know the standing orders are very clear. Whenever he has an interest and he hasn't spoken, he takes the priority. You are the ones who made the stand, you are the one actually who voted on the motion successfully. So leader of majority will speak, and next, Honorable Bayaya, you should be preparing on this other side.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I support the Budget and Appropriation Committee reports, first I would like to express my gratitude to the Budget and Appropriation Committee and indeed all departmental committees for working diligently to come up with a report of the budget estimates for the financial year 2019-2020. In line with Article 221 of the Constitution, Section 39 of the PFM Act, and Standing Order 235. So this budget report estimates of 2019-2020 is in this House legally. Mr. Speaker, I also want to congratulate and thank the National Treasury for submitting for the first time a detailed budget estimates for the financial year 2019-2020, unlike the previous years. In the previous years, we had a problem as a House that they were not giving us a detailed budget estimate. But this year, they have favored also our and respected our Parliamentary Budget Office, unlike before, with soft copies. You know, they used to bring only the hard copies, and I used to table them here. But this year, they have brought soft copies. And again, for the first time, they have uploaded these estimates on their website, because these are public documents. So the people of Kenya can look at these documents, can analyze. So I think the National Treasury have also helped the country in line with the new Constitution of 2010. So Speaker, this went a long way in even making the various departmental committees to scrutinize faster the budget estimates, as well as look at the accountability and the transparency aspect of the budget making process. And Mr. Speaker, this is a time when you can tell the difference between the Senate and the National Assembly. The budget making process is the only powers given to this House, which that tells you it's the upper house. And you know, Honorable Tene Amolo, who was a part of the people who crafted the new Constitution, should talk to our colleagues that there's no way you can be an upper house if you don't have the powers in the Constitution. So those who are in the Senate, if they want powers, they come to the National Assembly. Mr. Speaker, again, transparency and accountability is key in considering and approving the budget estimate. And this, again, this has been actualized this year through the comprehensive analysis of the budget estimates within Parliament. In a span of 5 years, Mr. Speaker, for the first time, in a span of 5 years, the budget has moved from line item budget to a program-based budget, where before we were never used to deal with the projects that governments wants to invest in. So we are happy in 5 years, we have moved from line item budget to a program-based budget. And this is what this House and its committees have been demanding for in the last 5 years. And this is a milestone, Mr. Speaker, and it never existed since 2002. Since 2002, budget was just a block figure. You didn't know what was inside, and they say the devil is in the details. So now we have the details. Each member can know what we are giving government. When we go to the vote of account, then the House that appropriates the monies that are given to all the three arms of government and the county government, we will have an opportunity to go and do the oversight. So, Mr. Speaker, I reiterate that we have become an envy of many parliamentary jurisdictions. There are many other countries, other parliaments who are coming to learn how we control, as the people's representative, the budget-making process. And that's why you see a number of delegations coming from various countries to learn from us. The Speaker, the economy has been growing well at 6% in 2018. The growth of our economy was at 6.3% in 2018, and this was mainly driven by improved performance in the agriculture sector. Unlike what we are going to face this year, because in 2018, we got enough rains, the agriculture sector did very well. But 2019, with the impending drought, we hope other sectors, the manufacturing sector, the financial sector, will help us maintain and increase that economic growth rate that we achieved of 6.3 in 2018. Speaker, the inflation rate in our country has remained stable at 4.7% in 2018, and currently, as of now, 2019 is at 5.5%. And if you look at our counterparts, the economies that we can compete with, South Africa, Nigeria, Egypt, we are still at a lower level. So our economy is doing. Based on the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, it's also estimated that we have created over 841,000 jobs in 2018, with 84% of those jobs created in the informal sector, Mr. Speaker. 84% of the 841 of the jobs created are in the informal sector. So which means Kenyans who are doing their own small-scale businesses in the Juakali sector. So the really job creation, according to the report, is that it's in the informal sector, and we need to support the informal sector. Mr. Speaker, the implementation of the budget estimates for 2019-2022 are set to actualize the economic growth of 6.2%. So the projection for 2019 is 6.2. Last year it was 6.3. This year the projection is 6.2. So it's gone down by 0.1%. And I'm sure that is because of the challenges that the agriculture sector is going to face. Mr. Speaker, I want to say without any fear of contradiction that the big four agenda of President Uhuru Kenyatta have received substantial amount of resources in this budget, unlike last year. That this year, in the budget estimates of 2019-20, approximately 15% of the budget, which is like 450 billion, have been allocated to go to the implementation of projects and programs which are in line with the big four agenda. So the line ministries, whether it is universal health care, whether it is manufacturing, whether it is housing, whether it is food security, they have no reason not to implement the Big Four agenda, because 15% of this year's budget, 2019-20, which is equivalent to 450 billion, have been allocated to the Big Four agenda of President Uhuru Kenyatta. And these resources will be adequate to continue, Mr. Speaker, with the implementation plan for the financial year 2019-2020, since most of these projects are new and are already ongoing before the formulation of this agenda. These are in food security, universal health care, and support for the manufacturing sector. Mr. Speaker, I also commend the recent directive of the President on the clearance of pending bills. This will enable continued growth of the small and medium enterprise, especially by the youth, and also the completion of the stall projects. Speaker, I think as a House we need to amend the procurement law, that if you provide services to government, if you supply goods and services to government at any level, whether it's the county or the national government, or to Parliament or the judiciary, like the private sector, there must be a timeline for payment. You either pay, say, you pay within 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. You cannot keep people's money for 2 years, 3 years, 10 years. And people are paying interest on the loans they have borrowed. This trend must change, that you give government services, goods and services, and then you don't know when to get back your money. But I'm happy the President has seen this, that the small and medium, the SMEs were collapsing, and these are the drivers of our economy. These are the people who drive our economy. And that's why our economy is very resilient to shocks, you know, to international, to the weather, to other economic shocks. So if we kill the SMEs, if we hold their money for too long, then we are going to affect the general well-being of our economy. Secondly, we must pay pending bills so that stalled projects are completed. Speaker, if you go around the country in our constituencies, you see projects which are stalled. And when you ask, contractors are saying we have not been paid. So it's good we also pay these pending bills, and if it's a road, water, health care, these projects are not stalling and they are paid. And Mr. Speaker, in this regard, I support the Budget and Appropriation Committee in their recommendation, which is this report, which they have asked the National Treasury to come up with a policy framework for the completion of stalled projects by October 1st, 2019. That's a recommendation of the Budget and Appropriation Committee. And when we reach 1st of October 2019, we expect the National Treasury CS to present to this House a policy framework on how he wants to deal with the completion of stalled projects. I really welcome that proposal to amend the PFM Act to provide for penalties or failures to settle pending bills. And this is where now we should go. And the chair is here sitting behind me. He has really put it in his recommendation that we need to amend the PFM Act and provide for penalties for failure to settle pending bills. If government cannot settle pending bills over a period, there must be penalties. Because the money you have borrowed from the bank, if you don't pay, you also pay penalties. Mr. Speaker, the bulk of the recurrent expenditure, which is 7% for all the ministries, departments, and agencies, and is mainly under the State Department of Interior, Ministry of Defense, State Department for Early Learning. Speaker, there's a problem of recurrent in county governments. Between 60 to 65% of the monies we send to county governments is used for paying salaries. And it's used for paying salaries of not important professionals like doctors and nurses. This money is used for paying relatives, friends of governors who call themselves advisors, who get fake degrees from River Road, And we can't allow this. The essence of devolution was to take development to our people. The essence of devolution was to build more hospitals, to do more roads, to improve agriculture and livestock. If devolution is going to be, as we are seeing, that we are going to pay salaries, every governor today, if a young man posts something on Facebook, the next morning he's given a letter. You become a youth advisor in the CEC's office. And I think the Public Service Commission must do an audit on rationalization. You can't have a country where all the taxes we collect is paid through salaries, even for the national government. Mr. Speaker, the bulk of the capital spending in this budget, which is approximately 45% of the total ministry, departments, and agencies' capital budget, is accounted mainly for under the Ministry of Infrastructure, the program of road transport. So infrastructure is getting a huge budget for infrastructure. The Department of Transport, the Ministry of Water and Sanitation, the Department of Energy, and the Department of Housing and Urban Development. With this budget, we want to see more Kenyans connected to electricity. We want this story of having gensets in Wajir, Mandera to stop. You can use the sun. There's a lot of sun in northern Kenya. You can put serious mini-grids, solar projects in Wajir that can give you 10, 15 megawatts. Why do you allow the people of Wajir? And I'm talking because I had an experience when I became a member of parliament for a constituency called Dugis in 2007. I was a victim of those engines. But through the help of President Uhuru Kenyatta, now Garissa, my constituency, is connected to national grid. And that's one of the reasons why they elected me back 3 times. Why should Wajir, Lamu, Mandera, why should they be under gensets since independence? That is not acceptable. We need more roads because we have given the Ministry of Roads more money. And we want these roads to be equitable. Each part of our country. A member for Baringo Central is saying yes. I'm wondering, he has produced a president for 24 years. And I can't imagine he has no roads. Now, those of us who did not produce a president or a prime minister, now you are sitting behind me. You had President Moi for 24 years. If he never did roads, my friend, you wait. Those of us who didn't produce a president must get roads first. Yeah, so I should expect a member for Mumias to talk, or a member for Kilifi North. No. Just because I have mentioned Moi. Yes. So I will mention Uhuru. I said Moi in reference, was a Moi respected in reference to a president. Well, the point of order, if you want to say Moi was not a president. And the Speaker, already there's a referendum questions to remove women rep.
Proceed and contribute.
To remove women rep.
I am the one in charge.
So yeah.
What is it?
A member for Baringo, women rep of Baringo, she's shouting. You should be very much concerned this morning.
Okay, then
if
in that case,
our court questions are, well, you go home.
Member for Baringo, what's your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, sir, Mr. Speaker, sir, you know I'm concerned when the leader of majority is saying when the president was, Moi was a president for Kenya for 24 years. He was not the president for Baringo. He only came from Baringo, and he was serving Kenya. It is unfortunate that he can fix him. So you don't fix as if he didn't do all the roads. So we still have roads that need to be done. You cannot say because he was a president, now you oppress us now.
I have a problem with picking what is actually put out of order because what the leader said is that the president came from Baringo and most likely most of the roads would have been made at that point. And
Mr. Speaker,
yourself, you say he was a president of Kenya, which Baringo is part of Kenya.
Mr. Speaker, to help her, before 2010, President Moi was a member of parliament for Baringo Central, if you don't know. He was a member of parliament for Baringo Central, the way I'm a member. And today I can tell you, just because I'm a leader of majority, there is a lot of development going on in my constituency. Yes, even the national grid has reached Garissa. So if you guys left on the job, and the Speaker, the other issue was, there is a referendum coming to scrap women rep. Yes. So they should, this morning they should be worried. Speaker, can you protect me from, there is a referendum. You should be worried.
I don't want members who are shouting
Yes,
from their seats.
You're right.
You know,
I agree with Honorable Rahema. She said, I'm going for a member of parliament of a constituency. Because women rep, according to the signatures being verified, you are endangered species.
What is it, Honorable Chepkut?
You are
Honorable
endangered
Chepkut.
species. Yes.
Order members, order members. We are in a different dispensation.
Yes.
You don't shout from the seat you are in.
Absolutely.
Shouting point of order. There are gadgets here, and I'm giving the opportunity to somebody who has placed that particular gadget. What is it, Honorable Chepkut?
Leader of majority, I want you to withdraw with speed. President Moi was a great statesman of this country. We must respect him because he did great things in this nation.
Now
even he appointed your own.
Honorable Chepkut. Honorable Chepkut, you probably you have a very good point indeed. The problem is that you have used that particular point that I've given you, which you indicated is a point of order, to actually contribute and make a statement. Okay. Now, the statement might be correct, but the formula you have used is wrong.
Speed.
So, because you've gone into a speech. So, you are not telling me where
The Speaker, he is my very good friend.
Is out of
Only
order.
that I have to withdraw, I don't know that.
But you have made your statement anyway. Honorable Chepkut, you have made your statement, and it is on record.
The Speaker, you know, Honorable Chepkut is a total man. Is a reincarnation of a total man. So he's still giving instructions. He's telling me to withdraw with his speed. He thinks we are in the 80s and 90s. Mr. Speaker, nobody can. This is a house of free thought. You can say, and what I have said, Mr. Speaker, about Honorable Sabina is...
Please wind up.
yeah, I'm winding up.
Because
before the women rep were under siege from Professor Aukot interrupted me. And there's a referendum coming, and we'll add the questions, even to scrap the Senate. What's the big deal? And I was happy last night. The Speaker, it's projected.
As you wind up.
The Speaker, it was projected. Let me go back to the budget, and you give me 2 minutes. I'm finishing.
1 minute.
2 minutes, Mr. Speaker.
1 minute, Leader.
Speaker, okay, 2 minutes. Mr. Speaker, it's also projected that the revenue in 2019-20 will stand at 2.12 trillion. However, this will not be enough to fully finance the budget deficit and will require external and domestic borrowing. But I want to thank the Chair of Budget and the departmental committees. For the first time, we have reduced the deficit.
Now,
and we'll keep on.
What is it again, Honorable? No, that's not Sabina. You actually withdrawn your card, so it means you are no longer interested in. Because I was going to give the member for Samburu.
Why are you allowing these ladies to harass me?
Yes, so now no, I mean, you, Honorable Lesuda, you keep putting... Honorable Lesuda, what is it?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Although it has been overtaken by time, but the question I wanted to ask is whether the majority leader is in order to preempt an issue to do with referendum, which is not before this House, which is, and to say that the seats of women reps is gone, that the seat of women rep is already gone when...
No, I didn't say that.
Yeah, that is what you said.
No, I didn't say that.
There is a lot, I realize there is a lot of sensitivity to that.
Yes.
But having heard the leader of majority very keenly,
oh, I didn't say it
he did not say that it has been scrapped. He said there is a possibility that's going to be scrapped. You will have to look at the records, and I would not encourage members to shout from where they are, because
Mr. Speaker, I want to repeat again. It is only in this chamber, and I have lived here for 13 years. This is where, as a legislator, you exercise free thought, and nobody can stop you. Questions, the signatures are being verified. I have a copy of the referendum questions. We are only waiting for the signature to be verified. whether you like it, I'm talking in Proverbs, whether you like it or not, you should be worried today if those signatures are verified. Because the bill will be sent to the counties for them to be approved. It will be brought here, and I'm sure here there will be a lot of majority vote. I am sure. So you better prepare. Yeah. Mr. Speaker, I have only 1 minute. Mr. Speaker, I have 1 minute. As a House, Mr. Speaker, we expect it will be implemented as approved, and any supplementary budget will be only the unforeseen and emergency issues. Mr. Speaker, it's a Wednesday morning, so
to Mr. Shungwa's committee, and realize that a lot of young people are interested in starting their own business other than looking for employment. And it is this direction, Mr. Speaker, budget needs to encourage so that this country can go into manufacturing, Mr. Speaker, so that when the goods come by the new train, Mr. Speaker, from Mombasa, we are bringing in a lot of tons from other countries, and a very few of tons are leaving the country for sale abroad. Therefore, once we encourage Kitri to incubate small businesses, we are going to, in manufacturing, and our products will also sell outside there, Mr. Speaker, and we'll be able to develop our economy, and I think that was a great one. The second one I want to talk about, Mr. Speaker, is roads. I have seen the way the appropriations have been made. They are very general. You can't still narrow to specific projects, and I believe the way they have been grouped is good. In Makueni, Mr. Speaker, there is a road which links counties and which also links countries from Tanzania through Emali to a place called Ukia, and links again through Machakos, and is able to link to Embu. And there are some sections of it, part of them in Makueni constituency, in between Emali and Ukia, not yet tarmacked, although tarmacking is going on in some parts of Mboni, which had been started some years ago. And I believe if funds can be allocated, and I had communicated to the ministry before several times, even in writing, such a road can link counties, can link countries, because you can be able to travel from Tanzania to Ethiopia using that particular road, and it's a shortcut, Mr. Speaker. Then that will still spur development, and will also, that is the area around the Kalamba where we do a lot of fruit growing, and the movement and the fruit processing also. And it will be easier for us to transport these products to areas that can be marketed, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I want to really support this budget, and urge members to do so, that when it is read tomorrow, we have a budget, Mr. Speaker, which can move this country to the next level, economic-wise, Mr. Speaker. And it is good members are able also to criticize, but it is also good to make sure that whatever criticism comes in is taken in, and we are able to improve this document before it is finally read tomorrow, Mr. Speaker. I've also looked at the area of irrigation, Mr. Speaker. You know, most of this country is dry, but we have huge rivers going through. We have the Tana River, we have the Athi River, which go through Makueni constituency, where Thwake Dam is now under construction, despite challenges when it is beginning. But if we could budget more on irrigation, Mr. Speaker, smaller dams, taking irrigation to the people, it will be much better, so that we can have many other areas we can grow food, Mr. Speaker, and feed the country. I want to thank you, Mr. Speaker, and beg to support.
Honorable Dr. Otiende Amolo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, as I contribute to this motion, and I note the sentiments of the leader of majority, I think a debate arose as to whether members should be listened to in silence. And I thought that the member who had sought to know would have known that the standing order is Standing Order 24-4, which says we shall listen to the president in silence. However, under Standing Order 78, we ought to listen to every member in silence. So if the member, Honorable Baya, was right to request that he be listened to in silence. Mr. Speaker, I generally applaud this motion and the efforts that have been made lately, and I think there's a lot of positive movement. The 4 points I want to make, Mr. Speaker, first, is that we consciously, as a country, and as the team that wrote the Constitution, moved the power to determine budget from the executive to Parliament, which is the representative body of the people. We as Parliament must fully seize that, and all elements that appear to still retain the major say or the larger say in Treasury must be resisted. And Mr. Speaker, I therefore think that we need to carefully examine the process of budgeting, the way it moves from Treasury to the committee to this House, and to be sure that the ultimate product is a product of this House and not of Treasury. I am not fully satisfied that we are there. I think that Treasury has, through very devious means, retained a very fundamental say in the ultimate budget. And therefore, I think that is something we need to look at very carefully. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, I think that we ought to caution and ensure we exercise our powers to avoid Treasury sabotaging a budget that is passed by Parliament. In the ultimate say, you find that we pass a budget, but over 50% of that budget is not allocated. As we speak today, each member is entitled to a CDF of about 109 million. To date, all of us have only received barely between 50 and 53 million. And that means that essentially, by executive fiat, the executive has halved what Parliament allocated to CDF. And it is not unique to members of Parliament alone. That basically means then that the budget we pass is a mere recommendation, but the executive then determines what the actual budget should be. That should not be. Thirdly, Mr. Speaker, is a practice of the executive slashing budgets that are allocated by Parliament at whims by different percentages. It means that by that process, Treasury is assuming the powers of Parliament in making the budget and therefore determining which body should get what allocation and which one should not. That is a practice that we ought to censure. That is a practice that we ought to stop because it's not based on the Constitution, it's not based on the law. Looking at the specifics of the budget, Mr. Speaker, I think that the budget is generally much more balanced than it has been before, but there are three specific items that attract some sort of negative attention. One of them, Mr. Speaker, there's an item called Government Advisory Services that has been allocated 910 million. I don't know what that is, because we know the Attorney General is the Chief Government Advisor and they have a separate allocation. There's a budget for the Ministry of Interior, and in this particular budget, the Ministry of Interior, of course, gets a lot of money, 139 billion, but under that budget, there's something called Policy Coordination and Support Services, which gets 28 billion. To my mind, Mr. Speaker, this is where the mischief lies. These are allocations that are given and are not properly accounted for. We, as the budget-making body, ought to be satisfied. Thirdly, Mr. Speaker, I have seen the allocations to the Office of the Deputy President, 2.1 billion. I am quite sure that this is where we host those large delegations. The Deputy President deputizes the President. The Presidency has 4.8 billion. Why does the DG need 2.1 billion? This money should be taken to TVET so that all of us can have TVET institutions. With that, Mr. Speaker, I generally support with some measured reservations. Thank you.
The Honorable Gitonga. Finally, a gentleman who enjoyed the largesse of the former President Moi when he was president of this country, who enjoyed the school known as Kabrak.
Yes.
It is your turn now to speak.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for reminding them of those good days in the old school, and especially when we had the retired President Daniel Arap Moi being mentioned. We remember his days in that school with nostalgia. You went to that school? Yes, including Mr. Speaker, sir. That one. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise to support the Budget and Appropriations Committee report on the proposed budget estimates for the coming financial year. I have gone through the report, and I wish to state that one reason I do support these estimates for purposes of the furtherance of the Big Four agenda,
which really is what our government is now diving into and ensuring that we actually realize that agenda in the 4 sectors that have been set out. Most important is the infrastructure sector, whereby most of the roads, especially in the rural areas, are actually in a pathetic state. And I do make this argument bearing in mind my constituency, Tharaka, where time and again I have been to the Ministry of Roads seeking funds even to simply maram most of the roads, but I have not been successful. I have seen an allocation regarding roads. I have seen many counties getting money to maram their roads, if not to tarmac, and I will therefore be urging that ministry that when I visit, I need a consideration. The other sector is on education, whereby we have to realize the best quality education for our children, and we have made a provision for this. Unfortunately, and this is very important because I have just been granted a charter for a university college in Tharaka, the Tharaka University College, a constituent college of Chuka University, and I have gone through the budget and find that it has not been allocated any money for development. I wish to confirm that I will be urging the Committee on Education, while we go to the Committee on Appropriations, the Committee on Supplies, to consider allocating an amount of at least 100 million to that university for purposes of development. It is vitally important that as we move towards a 100% transition, our universities are equally developed, equipped, and enabled so that they are able to absorb the students who qualify from the secondary schools into the universities. It is also important to note that we have the food sustainability, food supplies in the country. Most of the areas in Kenya have received very little or no rainfall at all. There will therefore be need for relief food so that we are able to ameliorate the problem of lack of food in most areas. My constituency is affected. I know my county is affected. Kitui County is affected. Embu County is affected. All these ones, they would need special consideration from the Minister of Devolution so that there is sufficient food supplies in the country to serve all citizens and ensure that, one, we do not close schools because children lack food, and also we do not have deaths, whether in Turkana, West Pokot, or anywhere else where people lack food. And finally, having gone through this budget, I have noted an item, which is also a very important item, on the construction of county headquarters in 5 counties. The counties are Lamu, Isiolo, Nyandarua, and Tana River. The 5th one is the Rakanithi. While the other 4 counties have received 125 million, the Rakanithi has received a paltry 3 million shillings odd, just 3.152. And this is not explained. I hope nobody is being malicious. This is an error. But I will be moving again through the committee on the budget and appropriations that at least the money that is given to these 5 counties is shared pro rata, and that each county now gets.
The Honorable Gitonga is only 5 minutes each. And you will recall that when I joined Form 1, you were the captain of that great school, and you treated me very well. Thank you. You're a gentleman. The Honorable Wahungu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. And from the onset, Mr. Speaker, I want to congratulate the Committee of Budget for the work well done. I know what it means, Mr. Speaker, because in the last Parliament, actually, I served in the Committee of Budget, and at a time like this, normally the committee is very, very busy. Mr. Speaker, we are in the presidential system, In the presidential system, Mr. Speaker, Parliament is a budget-making house. We've said this before, but as we speak right now, this Parliament is not even a budget-making house. Why am I saying so? I'm saying so because, Mr. Speaker, there's a lot of influence of Treasury when it comes to the budget-making process. Mr. Speaker, when you look at the budget cycle, of course, it's a bottom-up approach. But looking at these figures, Mr. Speaker, you can truly see that it's not even reflecting what the sectors had presented to the Committee of Budget. This is the time, Mr. Speaker, we need to call a spade a spade. We are no longer in the parliamentary system. But if at all executive is going to influence this budget, Mr. Speaker, then we better go for a referendum and go back to the parliamentary system. Mr. Speaker, when we have a process of budget making like this, the committee needs to go further and tell us an overview of the previous budget implementation. It is not given anywhere. And we raised these issues in the last financial year, whereby we said it is important for the budget committee to inform members the status of implementation of the previous budget so that you debate from an informed perspective. But the issue of giving us these extractions from nowhere, Mr. Speaker, we get misplaced. I'm saying so, Mr. Speaker, because when you talk of budget making, this is just a routine, but it doesn't mean anything. When you go to Germany, the Bundestag, Mr. Speaker, the congressional in the United States, there's a lot of seriousness when it comes to matters of the budget. And as Honorable Leader Majority has said, the important issue of budget making in any parliament, you cannot take it for granted. And in many jurisdictions, parliament that makes budget, Mr. Speaker, in many jurisdictions, that is an upper house. And it goes without saying, in this country we have two houses, the Senate and the National Assembly. And because budget making is a National Assembly, it goes without saying that the National Assembly is an upper house. And we are saying this so that for our colleagues in the Senate, they get to know. In many other jurisdictions, Mr. Speaker, this is the criteria. An upper house is the one that has the jurisdiction of the budget making. Mr. Speaker, quickly, if I go back to this bill, to this budget estimate, Mr. Speaker, one thing I want to say, ordinarily, you must pass the division of revenue bill first, Mr. Speaker, then you go to the budget estimates, Mr. Speaker. From the budget estimates is when the CS comes here to give the revenue raising measures. Then from there you go to the finance bill. But as we are speaking right now, we've not passed the division of revenue, Mr. Speaker. We know very well that the mediation committee, the talks collapse. We are calling upon whoever they are. And we are calling our brothers in the Senate. It should not be a competition. We must do this for the benefit of this country. So the question is, how are the counties going to survive, and yet we've not passed the division of revenue? Even if we go far and pass these estimates, Mr. Speaker, there's a gap somewhere. So it's important as we move, there's a sequence, there's a logical flow of events. Unless we pass the division of revenue, we should not go to the budget estimates. This is some questions we are asking, Mr. Speaker, and later on, when the chair of the committee will be responding, we need him to look into that. Mr. Speaker, the budget policy statement and this budget estimates, there's a big variance. And the objective of the budget policy statement, Mr. Speaker, is to give the key priority areas. So the budget estimates must be aligned to the budget policy statement. But when you look at this, there's a variance. We are told 78 billion difference. This is to tell you, Mr. Speaker, we need a commitment. When the budget policy statement has been tabled on the floor of the House, it is obvious, expected, that the budget estimates must align itself to that, Mr. Speaker. So we need to correct this as we move on. The big problem in this country, Mr. Speaker, it is corruption. And when you talk about fight against corruption, Mr. Speaker, there are independent commissions that need to be funded very well. I've gone through quickly how much they've allocated, Mr. Speaker. It is something not significant. How do you expect?
The Honorable Ahungu, I know you are used to speaking for 10 minutes. But honorable members, you must prepare yourselves to speak your thoughts within 5 minutes. Honorable Ahungu, I'll give you 1 minute to wind down, but I'll not extend the same largesse to the other members. So the ones who will come after Wahungu, please prepared to
Mr. Speaker,
abide
it
with
is
the time.
important that when we prepare and we come here, you don't give us enough time to debate. It's very, very unfortunate. Let me go quickly then to the political parties fund. In the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, it says 0.3% should go to the political parties fund, Mr. Speaker. Treasury has never allocated the 0.3%, Mr. Speaker. And this fund is important so that we don't have individuals who are going to be the one funding political parties at their will. So we are calling upon Treasury, and we know this matter went to court. There was a determination by the court, Mr. Speaker. I've looked around and I'm not seeing the amount of money. I'm saying this because like the Cody coalition, Mr. Speaker, we are supposed to benefit. You are aware about that. We need to get our billions back, Mr. Speaker, so that we can strengthen the political parties when it comes to matters of democracy. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, the universities are suffering. There is a lot of underfunding. We're having problems in universities because we don't have enough allocation of money. When it comes to Higher Education Loans Board, we've heard of slay queens. People, students going to look for sponsors because, Mr. Speaker, Higher Education Loans Board is not given enough money to give this money to the students, Mr. Speaker. This is important if we want to advance education in this country, Mr. Speaker. Higher Education Loans Board must be given more money. When it comes to CDF, we are now doing 50%, Mr. Speaker. The financial year has ended, and yet Treasury has not released the 100% money that is required. This is very, very unfortunate, Mr. Speaker, and this issue of IFMIS, we must look into the benefits of IFMIS, because Treasury has been using IFMIS, Mr. Speaker, for their selfish interests. Again, when it comes to the counties, Mr. Speaker, devolution is there to stay. And we are saying this, Mr. Speaker, that we should be able to increase more money to the counties, Mr. Speaker, so that this devolution can be able to work, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Budget Committee has done very well, but there's so much that needs to be improved, Mr. Speaker. These government advisory services, I'm unable to know what is it for. If it's for BBI, it is okay, because we brought a motion in Parliament, both in the National Assembly and the Senate, and if there's need to be for referendum, we should provide this money here for the referendum. Money for the census, I can see is there, and it's important. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Very well. The Honorable Amalu and the House, you might want to consider, even as our mediation proceedings go on the division of revenue bill, you must go back to the basics and look at the fundamentals of the role of the Senate in protecting the interests of the counties vis-a-vis the role of this House as the budget-making House. Yet the budget estimates come from the executive. What is it that we shall be protecting in those mediation proceedings? What will be our position? These are the things that we must think about as we go into that mediation. Probably the mediation should be between the Senate and probably the executive, because the budget belongs to the executive, not this National Assembly. Just a thought. We shall give this opportunity to the Honorable Jomo Washiali.
I want to take this opportunity, Honorable Speaker, to thank you for this opportunity and quickly thank the Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah-led committee for this budget report, and also add my voice in thanking the committees that despite the fact that they were on recess, they had to meet the relevant ministries to make sure that this report is concluded. Honorable Speaker, why do we budget after every financial year? Honorable Speaker, in my position as a member of Parliament representing the people of Mumias, I have a very, very strong feeling that we budget because we want to budget for, to achieve some certain policies that the executive and the party in government has adopted. For example, Honorable Speaker, you will realize that currently the policy of government is to establish a curriculum-based, competency-based curriculum. And this has gone a long way, Honorable Speaker, to promote the technical knowledge. If you looked at this in this budget, Honorable Speaker, you will find that we have only allocated 4 billion to the TVETs, and yet, Honorable Speaker, we have established over 130 technical colleges around the country. I am surprised, and I'm really wondering whether with these 4 billion shillings only, we will be able to run these colleges effectively for the 1 year that this budget is supposed to be addressing. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, I think it's important that as a country, and given also what I've heard, we are budgeting to fund a policy of government or party in position. And Honorable Speaker, the CBC, the competence-based curricula for us, is a dispatch of what used to happen and where we feel strongly as a party and as government that this country needs to go. I have had many other quarters and major stakeholders like teachers wanting to be involved in the development of this curricula, and I was wondering, because it's the ministry which has employed them, and it's the ministry which is paying them, and it's the ministry which is giving them work to do, and yet they want now to control again the ministry. Honorable Speaker, I want to thank the President for coming up with a major policy shift in terms of focusing on manufacturing, housing, food security, and universal health. But if you looked at this budget, Honorable Speaker, and I'm talking briefly so that I can be able to cover as much ground as possible. Honorable Speaker, you will not see clearly how much has been put for the purpose of manufacturing. Honorable Speaker, you will not see clearly how much has been put for housing. And since this, to me, is a major policy shift, I think, Honorable Speaker, it should have come out clearly that now in manufacturing, because of this shift, policy shift, we are going to do this and this and this. Look at Western, for example, Honorable Speaker. Many of the companies that were there have collapsed, whether they were private, public, or semi-public, they have collapsed. So when we are talking of manufacturing agenda, what does it mean to the people of Western Province? Mr. Speaker, this has not been clearly addressed, and I hope that going into the future, we will have this properly cleared. Honorable Speaker, there is even the aspect of public participation, Honorable Speaker, that I think as Parliament, we sort of failed on how to involve the public in the issues of this budget.
The Honorable Jomo, I had already directed that I will not be giving extra time, because we have a lot of interest in this. As it is, we have 20 members waiting. And as you know, this is the last day. So kindly bear with me. 1 minute, 1 minute. And this is the very last one that I will grant.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for that 1 minute. What I was addressing, Honorable Speaker, and I am sure all members will agree with me, that as Parliament, the way we approached the public in terms of contributing to this budget, Honorable Speaker, leaves a lot for us to answer, because if the team that came to Kakamega had only a few members who came and participated, and yet this is a national budget which we should have worked on very well in terms of public participation, so that we involve as many Kenyans as possible towards this budget making. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
But the Honorable Washeli, I have seen from the budget that Kakamega is one of the few counties that are lucky to have been considered for allocation from the public participation hearings. I don't know why you are complaining, because there are so many. Very well. We shall have the Honorable Mule, member for Matungulu.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to debate and look at the budget report. Mr. Speaker, I want to say very clearly, we have a clear responsibility as Parliament to make sure that we do our duties and make sure that the government and the people of Kenya have a well-balanced budget. Mr. Speaker, I want to put very clearly to the Budget Committee that as of the budget, we have looked at the issue of health. If you look at the budget policy recommendation which have been done by the Budget Committee, Mr. Speaker, in the Health Committee, we have interacted with the Health Ministry for the last 1 year. We interacted with them during the BPS process. And we came and looked at the budget, Mr. Speaker, and realized that there are serious gaps which need to be looked at. Mr. Speaker, I want to pick policy number 1 on the health sector the Budget Committee has made, about 4.6 billion shillings, which is supposed to be used to roll out of universal health care. Mr. Speaker, these are mockery to this House. For simple reason, when the pilot counties for UHC last Parliament were allocated 5.2 billion shillings for only 4 counties. This year, we are allocating 4.6 billion for 43 counties. Mr. Speaker, what we did as Health Committee, we looked at this figure and it's a total mere figure to roll out UHC. First and foremost, we need to have the report of the 4 counties, which are the pilot. So, Mr. Speaker, this is a figure whereby, as a committee, we agreed to reallocate it to various sectors, especially the referrals, to make sure that we strengthen the UHC. And once the ministry gives us the report on the pilot counties, we come back to this House and do a supplementary to allocate enough money. Mr. Speaker, my surprise is the Budget Committee, after agreeing with our chair on this, they have not effected this. Mr. Speaker, the second issue on the health sector is the issue of the level 5 monies. The money which is distributed to only 11 hospitals within the country, leaving the others, which is about 4.3 billion shillings. Mr. Speaker, to the surprise of us as a committee, not Treasury, not the ministry, who have given back an accountability whereby for the last 4 years this money has been allocated to the level 5, whether they reach the hospitals, whether there is any report given back to this House of evaluation, whether there is value for that money. And Mr. Speaker, as a committee, we decided we penned this issue. And the Committee of Budget have agreed with us that there is no framework. We need to do a framework to make sure that that money goes straight to those institutions. Mr. Speaker, the Budget Committee, after agreeing with us, they are keeping this money pending somewhere when Kenyans are dying Kenyatta. Mr. Speaker, I want to urge the Budget Committee. As Health Committee, we have forwarded our amendments to them. I want them to look those amendments, not from the individual point of view or from the committee point of view, but to the amendments to be looked on the help of Kenyans, Mr. Speaker. Because if we allocate that 4.3 billion shillings to Kenyatta, to Moi Referral Hospital, they will be able to deal with the menace of cancer in this country. But, Mr. Speaker, the Budget Committee, after getting all these recommendations from the Health Committee, they have kept quiet, Mr. Speaker. It is the high time we call a spade a spade. Budget Committee must respect other committees' recommendations. Because we interacted with the Ministry of Health for a whole week regarding this budget. But they sat for 1 hour and make a recommendation on our behalf as a committee, and the committee had already made the allocation. Mr. Speaker, I want to urge this House and urge the Budget Committee to look at the issue of health in this country. The health of Kenyans is suffering. And because we are allocating money without follow-up, we are not going anywhere, Mr. Speaker. I want to urge and beg with the Budget Committee. The forwarded amendments on these figures, especially on those 2 lines, must be looked.
The Honorable Mutinda Mule, very passionate about matters health. I think you have made yourself very clear. We shall now have the Honorable Mutunga, member for Tigania West.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to the report of the Budget and Appropriation Committee on the proposals for 2019-2020 budget. Honorable Speaker, looking at the three documents that normally are presented to the committees, the BPS, then there is the estimates themselves, and the proposals that come after the committees have looked at the estimates, we realize that they are all on increment trend. The BPS is always lower than the estimates themselves. And when the committees present their budgets to the Budget and Appropriation Committee, which I am privileged to be a member, you realize that the estimates or the proposals from the various committees are in most cases big. What does this tell us? Honorable Speaker, we wonder whether there are serious and sufficient consultations between the different cost centers or the different budget sources and also the Treasury when they are preparing the BPS, and because we see there is the inclination that more money is always needed. When you look at the actual castings, Honorable Speaker, the list always increases. Always there is a proposal to increase the budget. I would like to basically say that the Budget and Appropriation Committee has no local standard to change any of those proportions, or rather the proposals that are made. The Budget and Appropriation Committee, and I'm not defending the committee, Honorable Speaker, didn't look at the logic of the allocations and also look at the proposals that are made for new monies. Wherever there was a proposal for more money, the Budget and Appropriation Committee, unless guided, was not able to give that money. Honorable Speaker, having said that, let me just point out a few issues that came out even as we looked at the budget process this year. One of the things is that there is a natural trend to look for more money. In most cases where there is natural attrition, when people retire, it is expected that there is money left from the salaries those people were earning. But realize that the BMAs are always looking for more money, and we wonder whether where the dues accruing to those people who are being paid before went to. The other issue is the level of scrutiny of the departmental committees. Honorable Speaker, the departmental committees took a lot of time to scrutinize their budgets from their departments. And it is important for this House to respect the proposals of the departmental committees because they did a good job. And that is why we have a more or less balanced budget this time around. We have looked at the issue of the fiscal deficit, and I would like to report that, Honorable Speaker, that was a bone of contention because we wanted the fiscal deficit to keep on reducing. Honorable Speaker, we have seen a possibility of misuse of Article 223, where even after passing this budget proposals as they are, at the end of the day, we have a supplementary estimate which proposes to change the alignment and to change the proportions, especially when it comes to reallocating development money into recurrent. This country cannot develop if we only vote for recurrent. And it is important for us to be very much alert when it comes to the issues of transferring money through supplementary estimates to recurrent. I want to specifically look at one sector that is of importance to this country and which has been neglected over time. Honorable Speaker, the agricultural check sector is so important that in the capture of the details of most of the reports, and even in this particular budget proposal, there is a recognition of the fact that because the weather was good last year, then it was possible for us to have an economy grow at a certain percentage. Honorable Speaker, this country has not adhered to the protocols they have signed at the African Union level, where other countries did sign these protocols and they are growing at 2 digits. We are growing at less than 2 digits because we are not very much adherent to what we have already signed. It is also a fact that the level at which GDP agriculture reduces poverty is 1.5 times any other GDP. And we are not alive to this fact, Honorable Speaker. Yesterday, there was a consultation, or it's going on right now, by the African Union, the sector that deals with the Malabo Declaration. And the consultations were held at, Safari Park, and this House was not represented. The country was not represented. We don't know whether we even have information from those areas. Honorable Speaker, if you look at the research fraternity of this particular country, the research is terribly underfunded. We have the best brains in the country and deployed to do research under the Kenya Agricultural and Livestock Research Organization, and they have very little money. They only rely on donor funding. And when you rely on donor funding, you do not develop the country, you do not spearhead the national agenda. You have to listen to what the donor says so that you may be able to do your research. Our research is
The Honorable Dr. Mutunga, your passion for agriculture is noted. And it is true that a nation that cannot feed its population cannot claim to be a true nation. So we must put our mouths where our food and agriculture is. I agree with you, the Honorable Mutunga, but your time is up. But before I give the next contributor, allow me to recognize in the public gallery the presence of students from Friends Bwake Boys School, Chirengani, Trans Nzoia County. Students from Musa Gitawa Primary School, Kikuyu in Kiambu. Students from Kids Zone Educational Center, Kabete, Kiambu County. Students from Ibacho High School, Nyaribari, Masava, Kisii County. They are welcome to observe the proceedings of the National Assembly. We shall now have contribution from the Honorable Oundo Ojiambo, member for Funyola.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this opportunity to contribute or make comments on the budget, on the report of the Budget and Appropriation Committee on the proposed budget estimates for the financial year 2019-2020. Honorable Speaker, I must take this opportunity to sincerely congratulate them and thank them for a fairly balanced allocation for the limited resources available in this country. However, we must start from the beginning that some of the assumptions being made in the report might not hold. We have a country that heavily relies on agriculture and agricultural production, contributing to about 34.2% of the GDP. In a year where we expect the agricultural production to be dismal or to be extremely poor, Honorable Speaker, the assumption that the revenue projections will be met, the assumption that the GDP will grow at above 6% seems to be far-fetched and not founded on any economic fundamentals. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, sir, quite a number of international organizations, IMF, World Bank, and African Development Bank, seem to suggest that the economic performance this year will be heavily depressed, highly depressed, so that whatever we think we'll achieve might not be achievable. So I will not be surprised, Mr. Speaker, sir, in the next few days or few months, a supplementary budget is presented here to continuously drastically reduce these provisions that were made in this budget. But nevertheless, Mr. Speaker, sir, allow me to make a few observations in respect of this particular budget. Let me start in respect of this report. Let me start on the issue of health. Honorable Speaker, sir, I think one of the greatest mistakes we made when we were designing the new constitution was to devolve health. I think that's something as a nation we must collectively agree we made a very, very big mistake, because when you look at the status of health facilities that are run by developed governments are in deplorable state. Many a times there are no drugs, there's literally nothing in those hospitals. The other day, I went to see a patient in the so-called Busia Referral Hospital, a patient that had been injured by a police officer. To an extent, they had to remove all his reproductive organ. Mr. Speaker, sir, it was such a shame, such a deplorable state, being accompanied by the members of the press, had actually to sweet-talk them, not to highlight and expose our nakedness in the public or the national media. I sincerely think we need to relook at it, and this allocation that has been put on hold, I think for purpose of universal health care, we need to relook at it clearly so that we see how we can redistribute that facilities or those funds to other sectors. Mr. Speaker, the manufacturing sector is critical to economic take-off this country. Last year, we recorded a slow development of the manufacturing sector. We had asked much more as members. I belong to the Committee of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives. We had requested much more funds to enable the sector literally invest heavily, For example, the Kenani Leather Factory, the affluent system for EPZA, the completion of the kid building in South B. Mr. Speaker, sir, the allocation we have been given, while we appreciate it's an improvement based on the last time, is still not enough. We need much more to enable us to take off. Mr. Speaker, but luckily enough, I'm happy that there seems to be some attempts to invest in the in the textile industry, the entire value chain. I hope that the trend will continue so that we revive Rivertex, we put in more money in the cotton growing sector so that we have our people from Busia benefit from this government of Jubilee. Due to the shortage of time, I stand to support.
Honorable CJ, the protester, number one, is protesting that the Honorable Undo should have a little more time at the mic. But the Honorable Doctor has already ceded the ground to the Honorable Angwenyi, the elder in the House. You may have your time at the mic now, the Honorable Angwenyi.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the estimates approved by our budgetary committee. But there are some issues which have not been addressed. For example, Mr. Speaker, there were roads in my county which were budgeted for in 2016-2017 budget and 2017-2018 budget. But they were nowhere, they were not allocated any funds 2018-2019 budget. I hope the committee will demand that those roads are reinstated and they are allocated funds. And that's one of the aspects they must check when they are approving those budgets, whether there are some projects which have been done away with without being done, without actually being done. I've got an experience, a very bad experience. In the year 2010, 2012, the government gave a budget allocation for an airport which borders Kisii County, Migori County, and Naroko County. 2 billion shillings to start that airport. In 2 years' time, the money was removed from there. We don't know where it went. There was no airport built. So we don't want to face the same situation with our roads. The second point is that money has been allocated adequately, in my view, to water. But we have not considered those densely populated areas of this country, like Kisii County, for example, Viga County, Kakamega, Kiambu, that where they are densely populated and their rivers, their water points, are heavily polluted. Actually, they are carrying diseases. So they must be considered. Water resources must be considered for those densely populated areas. Third thing is about earth. We have said the government, as one of the big 4 agenda, is universal health care. How can you have universal health care when you go to a Kisii hospital, or even you go to Mbagathi in Nairobi, and you find 3 people lying on one bed, a bed which should be carrying 1 person? Why can't we improve these facilities first before we can declare universal health care to all over the country? It doesn't make sense as far as I'm concerned. Because recently, on Monday, I went to Kisii Hospital to see some patient. And I found that patient, he was in a coma, but he's supposed to share a bed with 2 other patients. Finally, he died. And that gave a shock to those two colleagues that he was lying with in the same bed. And the hospitals such as Kisii Hospital, which is called Level 6 Referral and Teaching Hospital, that should be a national hospital. It should be allocated adequate resources. We should adequately provide resources to Kenyatta so they can perform its services. We should adequately provide resources to Moi Referral Hospital. So we have Kenyatta, Moi Referral Hospital, and Kisii Hospital. Then we go now to Jomo Kenyatta University, whatever hospital. in that order. So the earth must be provided with the adequate resources if we want to assist our people who are falling sick. And we must try to avoid having to refer people to India or America or Europe, because those services can be provided here if we facilitate adequately. Finally, on manufacturing, we must demand that we are told before, as we provide the budget, what manufacturing plant is going to be done in Kisii, in Nyamira, in Bomet, in Nyeri, so that we know that we are actually developing the entire country. Otherwise, we will be putting those factories in one county, and they will not help others. Those few remarks I beg to support.
Very well. The Honorable TJ, I see you have no interest in speaking for yourself, but you are agitating for the others to speak. I think that is your forte. The Honorable TJ is the only one who has led me into battle. When I joined the University of Nairobi, he was the chairman of Kenya Law Student Society, and he led us into a protest that cost us our whole year at the university. But I'll allow the member for Nairobi, the woman representative, to speak on behalf of TJ today, the Honorable Passaris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Thank you, my brother, Honorable TJ Kajwang. Mr. Speaker, I find it very difficult to stand here as a member of the Health Committee and as a member of Parliament to say that I support the report. As a Health Committee, we have interacted with all the sagas, all the referral hospitals. We've interacted with citizens. We've interacted with members of Parliament who come to us and tell us through questions that there are certain areas that they want us to focus on. So as a committee, we realized that there was some money, 4.6 billion to be precise, that was being put to universal healthcare. And we thought, we've not yet seen the report on the 4 pilots that were done by the country, by the government. So we said that that 4.6 billion, while we wait for the report, should be channeled towards areas that we have been informed are in dire need of money. There was also an amount of 4.3 billion that was going to go to the level 5 hospitals in the counties. And we have reason to believe that there is no proper structure to monitor the money that goes to the counties, so that we can actually know that the money that was allocated to improve level 5 hospitals is given to the county and the county implements it in that manner. So we felt that until that has been assessed and the structures are in place, that money should also be put together and put into areas that require money. So we came up with a comprehensive list, from blood transfusion to a hospital that has been dormant, not under construction for over 20 years, that is a 300-bed hospital that could help us address the spinal injury hospital shortage of 30 beds when we have 300 beds that is sitting idle because it's not been completed. So we looked at so many areas, so many sagas that required money, and we made the recommendations to the chair of the Budget Committee and his team. And when they met our chair, they actually said, yes, we approve. Because they had respect.
The honorable member for Nairobi, the chair for budget, proposes to inform you. Are you prepared to be informed?
Yes, because our chair came back and reported to us that she has presented. Okay,
just hold on so that he informs you.
Okay.
Chair, budget.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I just want to inform the member for Nairobi County that the particular hospital she is referring to has actually been allocated adequate resources. It's only that, healthcare being a devolved function, that hospital was started by the Ministry of Public Works some years back. And I do agree with her that it's a very old hospital that has been going on almost for 11 or 12 years. And it has, I think, over 500 million shillings allocated under the Ministry of Public Works for completion of that hospital.
Very well. The Honorable Passaris, proceed.
I hope he hasn't eaten into my time, Mr. Speaker. Okay, Mr. Speaker, the Budget Committee has public participation. Last year, they conducted public participation in Nairobi prior to the budget, and I was in the room when he was conducting public participation. This hospital was mentioned, and he assured us that he would put it into the budget, and he didn't. And I am actually glad that we have him on record saying that the money has been put, because the last time he said he had put the money, it was not there. But this is not just about the hospital in Nairobi. This is about saying, why are you putting money in UHC when we haven't got the pilot report yet? Why are you putting money in the referral hospitals, in the county level 5 hospitals, when we haven't got the right structure in place? When it comes to policy and structures, I recall in the last budget asking the Honorable Chairman of the Budget Committee that we needed the 1 billion shillings for reparation. And he said, no, we cannot put 1 billion shillings for reparation because we do not have policy and structures in place. I've put 100 million for the AG to work on policy and structures. Now, the thing is, today he's now trying to allocate 4.3 billion, where he knows very well between the National Assembly and the Senate, there are still issues that need to be defined. So I think he needs to be sincere. When we're talking about budgets, I think there's an important need to listen to all the committees, because they are interacting with the various leaders and the various sagas. Because what is the point of having committees come up with recommendations and then you just refuse them and do whatever it is you want? At the end of the day, we're representatives of the people. And the Health Committee is an agenda of the government in terms of universal health.
Honorable Passaris, I hope you're done. But there's a fundamental question on the chair of budget, that when you do your reply, probably for the satisfaction of the House, you might want to respond to this matter of the pilot UHC that was done and how it has impacted on your decisions on the matters health. This opportunity will go to the Honorable Wambugu, member for Kirinyaga Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving this opportunity to add my voice and comment on the Budget and Appropriation Committee report for the proposed budget estimate for the financial year 2019-2020. From the onset, Mr. Speaker, sir, I do want to support this report, but like what has been said before by the members who have contributed before me, I think it is very important that going forward, we do have status of implementation of the previous budgets. And why do I say so? For instance, like the previous budget, the last budget, like Kirinyaga Central, we were allocated about 15 million to improve the dilapidated roads. Unfortunately, to date, that has not been done. And I believe so many other money allocated in the previous budget, nothing has been done. So going forward, it is important for us to know what has been done in the previous budget and what has not been done, so that what has not been done can be captured in the current budget. Further, Speaker, I want to point out that for the Budget Committee, we know it's a very busy and a big committee, but it's very important when they are going for public participation, they cover as large counties or as many counties as possible. Because an item has caught my attention about KMTC campus in Kakamega. I have no problem with the 50 million being allocated to Ikromani in Kakamega. But I know there are about 65 campuses of KMTC spread out within the country, which begs the question that there must be some counties with more than one KMTC. The county I come from, Kirinyaga, has no single KMTC campus. So it is good that when these recommendations are being made, they are more equitable and fairer, so that if a county has one KMTC, I think another county should be given that opportunity. Mr. Speaker, the recommendation which I really want to support is about the amendment of PFM Act, where there's a proposal that all the outstanding bills, all the pending bills, should be paid within a certain period of time, and there must be sanction if you fail to do that. And I'm saying this having taken into account what is happening in my county of Kirinyaga County, where the pending bills of the previous county government, almost 2 years down the line, they have never been paid on basis that an audit ought to have been done first before the current governor paid the pending bills. And most of the contractors and suppliers in Kirinyaga County who had given or who had supplied or done some jobs in the previous regime, to date, they have not been paid. They have been rendered destitute. Their homes are being sold, and it's not fair. And I think it's across the country where we have these tendencies of having a bill, a pending bill, for more than 2 years, 1 year, or 3 years. I think this is going to be very timely. The other issue is about the TVET, money allocated to TVET. To me, I think we could have done better. It is very little compared to what we want to achieve as a country, so that every constituency should be able to have a TVET institution, so that once people clear the secondary school, they can now go to secondary or to tertiary institutions. Rastri is about the health. And as another member has said, I think Honorable Oudo, he has said, I think it was a mistake to devolve the health. We all know what has been happening in my county, Kirinyaga County, about our hospitals. And as we speak, all the hospitals are at standstill. And it's a shame that we are seeking medical attention or in Embu or Nyeri. And I think if this thing was not devolved, I think we would not be in a situation where we are. And Rastri is about, is on the audit, which they have recommended to do the audit in the early learning and basic education. I wish they could have gone further and recommend also for the secondary schools.
My brother Wambugu, your time has lapsed. Allow me to give this opportunity to the Honorable Member for Madare, Honorable Anthony Oluoch. The Honorable Oluoch, your mic seems not to be working. Yes, now it is.
It is.
Proceed.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Allow me to also add my voice and say that I support the Budget Committee on the report that they have done, and also to underscore what has already been said, that one of the 2 or 3 key roles of Parliament, other than oversight, representation, and resolving issues affecting the people, is a question of budget. So this is a very onerous task that this Parliament is undertaking at the moment, and we don't take it lightly. Let me begin from the comments that was made by the Leader of Majority, supporting the Budget Committee on the question of pending bills and the question of debt. And I want to say this, that even as we look at the amount of foreign debt that we have, there is what you call forced debts, and which comes in the form of these pending bills, and it is something that His Excellency the President has said must be dealt with. I wish that the Budget Committee, and the chair is seated here, that they could have gone a little further in their recommendation that they've made for the amendment of the PFM Act on the question of penalties to pending bills. I wish they went a step further and touched on the counties, either at the Constitution or the County Act or the PFM Act, and stated as follows, that when we allocate money to counties, no less than 70% of the monies that we allocate to counties must go to development as opposed to recurrent expenditures. So I support the question of the amendment, but I wish that the Budget Committee had gone further and said that we propose amendments so that when we allocate monies to funding to counties, we are able to see the impact same or the manner, the same way in which we see the impact of the CDF money. I want to speak briefly on what I haven't seen in this budget. I know very well that out there is work going on on proposals to amend the Constitution. And I haven't seen allocations that have been made in this budget and in the report on how we will be able to deal. I see the chair is waving something. I see the chair waving something there. I cannot see it, Honorable Chair. I wish that they would be able to make allocations specifically, because this is one of the things that we must undertake of the people of Kenya in terms of equity, inclusivity, and revisiting and looking at our structure of government, because it will also help us in terms of our role on oversight. I want to thank the Budget Committee, and I know why the chair is smiling, that over the last 1 year, I have been doing what you call one-man solo on non-compliance by the CS and Parliament on the question of statutory funds, in particular, the question of political parties fund. To the extent that the chair, with a light note when he meets me, he calls me Mr. Political Parties Fund. And I want to thank the chair, because not only have they been able to listen to the very many complaints and the concerns we have made, I have noted that they have put a 500 million to political parties fund in the main budget and some 300 million in the supplementary budget. I think for a beginning, that is a step in the right direction, and I want to support you. On a light note, when I met him, I told him that a chungwa for president, and how I wish he would stop following the other formation. I would be his tanga-tanga person without apology. I want to say on the very same issue that the committee should be able to look further and see how they will sort out the 4 billion that is pending in terms of the monies that have accumulated and really the subject of a decision that has been made by the Court of Appeal. I want to speak very quickly on the issue of TVETs. I see that they have allocated 546 million for TTIs and ongoing projects and about 1.02 billion to 30 TVETs. I hope that there will be equity in the identification of these TVETs, so that constituencies in Nairobi like Mathare, with a very high prevalence of unemployment and insecurity, we may be able also to benefit on questions of TVETs. I want to speak lastly on the question of infrastructure funding. Infrastructure funding, we must put in place some regulations on how the ministry allocates infrastructure funding. This thing is so skewed. There are people who will get 70 million.
The Honorable Anthony, you know it's 5 minutes, but you have very valid points. I will give this opportunity now to the Honorable Esuda Naisula, member for Samburu West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for granting this opportunity. And from the onset, I rise to support the Budget and Appropriations Committee report. And I'd also like to thank the chair, the committee, for putting in long hours, Mr. Speaker, to come up with this report, and also the budget officers who work tirelessly to ensure that this report is worked on and be accurate and be tabled in this House, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, one of the key issues that this Parliament has really stood out over the years is the issue of public participation, Mr. Speaker. It is important for the committee and even for us as members of Parliament, as we engage every day with our constituents and people of this republic, that is the moment you really capture the aspirations of the people of this country, Mr. Speaker, and the aspirations captured in the budget process, Mr. Speaker. And it is important that even those who implement this budget, Mr. Speaker, get out and interact with the constituents, Mr. Speaker, and the residents of this country, Mr. Speaker, to actually know what their needs are and priorities when they are implementing the projects, when they receive the money. Mr. Speaker, the second thing and the observation that is very key, and it is important, is the issue of pending bills, Mr. Speaker. And even as this Parliament passes the money so that we can conform to the presidential directive, but also good practice of procurement, Mr. Speaker, it is important to note that when the ministries get this money, it is not only to pay the big contractors, Mr. Speaker, but also to pay the pending bills of the small and medium enterprises, of the small traders, Mr. Speaker, who every day are being listed at the CRB, Mr. Speaker, because of the loans that they took, and they're just starting in contracting or in businesses, Mr. Mr. Speaker. So it is important that we follow up on who will be paid on these pending bills, and the small traders should not, or small contractors should not be left behind, Mr. Speaker. On issue on here, UHC, which has been said severally by members of the Health Committee, since I also sit in the Budget and Appropriations Committee, the whole aspect of holding the money until we get the report of the pilot project, Mr. Speaker, is so that we do not redirect this money to other projects. And then once we get the report, probably in 60 or 90 days, then we start looking for money which is not there to fund UHC. But what the committee is saying, let us put the money aside, 60, 90 days, let's get the report of the pilot project. Once it is agreed and it is approved by the committee, then this money is already there and we can use it for UHC. But we will not have to look for it for some areas where we do not actually have the money, Mr. Speaker. One of the things that I'm also happy about in this budget, Mr. Speaker, is the issue of young people, the internship and the Ajira. And if you notice in the Ajira, there was a reduction because there is a lot of duplication also in our budget. We want to do Ajira in our constituencies. We want to employ interns from our constituencies, Mr. Speaker, while all these monies should be consolidated so that we ensure that our young people actually benefit from internship and also the Ajira program, Mr. Speaker. One of the other things that also came out on this report, Mr. Speaker, was the whole issue of the funds that we give to the elderly and social protection. And we're saying let this money go to the labor ministry, Mr. Speaker, because they're the ones who keep the record. It's a social protection issue. And also the issue of universities and the fact that we want to improve the infrastructure of our university, Mr. Speaker, and the policy that the monies go to our public universities, Mr. Speaker. It is not fair that taxpayers' money go to private universities, Mr. Speaker, where we are now taking our children while our public universities are in deplorable conditions, and also we are not improving those institutions, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. I support.
The Honorable Mulyungi, member for Mwingi Central. It's not working? Try the next one. Try the next one, the one that CNN is not using.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support this report by the Budget Committee. But I want to state that the public participation which was done appears to have been done in 12 counties out of the 47. And those are the ones who gave projects. And in particular, I can see Embu with 6 projects, Nyeri 6 projects, Taita Taveta 9 projects. If you came to Mwingi or Kitui County, I would have given you 50 projects. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I want in the future the Budget Committee to come to Kitui. You are invited. You are invited. Itachinja mbuzi. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I can see in the budget there is nothing allocated for mining of coal. I'm a happy man because I put a petition here on coal and rejected coal.
The Honorable Mulyungi, the chair for budget, wants to, as a point of order. What is it, the point of order, the Honorable Ichung?
You know, Honorable Speaker, I don't interrupt. The Honorable Mulyungi is a very good architect and a very good member of Parliament. But is in order to be saying, mixing languages, I think he was speaking in English, and at some point he said, tutachinja mbuzi, which is mixing Kiswahili and English language. And maybe let me just take that opportunity to inform the Honorable Member that indeed we visited 12 counties this year. Last year we did 12, and it's good to inform the House that even the 12 that we visited, whose budget was taken away during supplementary one, if you read the report, we have also included the budget for those 12 counties that we visited last year. And in the next 2 years, hopefully we'll be able to visit another 24 counties, which will, in total we have covered all the 47 counties. And I appreciate that he will actually slaughter a goat. The Chinjambuzi, I think, was to slaughter a goat.
The Honorable Ishungwa, you seem to almost have taken the entire time for the Honorable Dr. Mulungi. But there are a lot of questions about the criteria that you have used in selecting those counties that you have visited. The Honorable Mulungi, you know the rules, that when you start to speak in one language, then you must finish your submissions in that language. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I was talking about core, that there is no budget for core, and I'm very happy. I'm an excited man. What has been included is 131 million for the study of airborne and geophysical survey on mining. Mr. Speaker, youth and women, I've noted there is a reduction of 600 million for youth and 100 million for women. This committee is not gender sensitive. This committee is not looking at the welfare of the youth. And I would have preferred if instead of reducing the budget for youth and women, they should have been increased. Food security, Mr. Chairman, there has been no rains. And in my county, we have a lot of problems of food. And I can see the addition of 400 million for food security is too little. It's a drop in the ocean. And I would have preferred that that budget should have been increased so that we secure food reserves for the remaining months when we will have no rains. Because the next rains will come in December, November, December, and we expect food in January, February. Mr. Speaker, water harvesting and ground exploitation. I can see an addition of 600 million shillings for water harvesting and ground exploitation. It is not enough. We have a lot of problems of water, especially in the dry counties, like my county, Kitui County. I would have preferred that this is increased so that we have more boreholes and dams in the counties. Uma Dam, there is an allocation of 500 million, which is too little for a dam. We have had a lot of wastage of money in other big dams, and I thought that money should have been brought to a place like Uma Dam in Kitui County, where we have a lot of problems of water. I agree with an additional allocation of 800 million for low-volume sea roads. For
the Honorable Dr. Mulungi. Yeah, you took a minute was taken from you. I'll allow you 1 minute so that you went down. But when you finish, the Honorable Abur, when Dr. Mulungi finishes, you can raise your point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the additional minute. I want to agree with the additional 800 million for low-volume sea roads, because the chairman of budget committee has been allocating himself roads. Now I can see now he has surrendered, and I can see now we have additional low-volume sea roads. I agree with the committee for removing 104 million from SRC. These are thieves, and they should be prosecuted. For irregular allocation, spending of 104 million to buy cars without the approval of Parliament. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I support. Thank you.
Yes, very well. The earlier speaker had said that we'll give Honorable Abul Paul. Is that so? For a point of order, on a point of order. What is out of order, Honorable Paul? Member Forongo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Considering that many members have contributed to this motion, and considering that we are yet to do the appropriation and appropriation bill for both the supplementary and the 2019-2020 budget, would I be in order to request the chair to allow the mover to reply? Thank you.
Honorable members.
No.
You know, honorable members, the good thing, the honorable Paul did ask the speaker. And the speaker, what he does is to check the mood of the house. And so, before I give any other person, or before we make any progress, I will determine the mood of the house. Honorable members, honorable Paul has raised that the mover be called to reply. Other members, so, honorable members, I'll put the question that the mover be now called to reply. Will as many as are of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as are of the contrary opinion say nay? Nay. Clearly, the nays have it. Shall we have top on the list? Top on the list is Honorable Pukose Robert, member for Edebes. Okay, next on the list is Honorable Cheruyot Jesire.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I would also want to rise to this motion today of the budget and support it with my reservations. That, Mr. Speaker, sir, the budget that has been done this year, having been a member of Health Committee, I want to give my dissatisfaction also because of what the committee did. We worked for like 10 days. Like my sister Esther said, we visited many sagas, and we have the problems of these sagas at our hand and at our heart. And after working on the budget and figures,
these common people must be motivated when they realize there is something.
Class money is sent little, 1 million per school, which is building one project and finishing. That is building like slums in holes, boreholes in communities so that they can use it to irrigate smallholder farms, and barns are put in the communities to do irrigation also. But then, looking at the bigger irrigation schemes, we've seen that dams have been built, but they have been built in one area. They have not been, we have not seen anything coming in Western region and Nyanza to promote food security in that area. We also feel in the near future we should have resources allocated in those areas so that we have dams in this area to promote agriculture and food security in a whole. We want to look at sports also, Mr. Speaker. The introduction of sports funds, sport funds is a welcome idea, hoping that it will sort out the problems that we are having now of stadiums. We have seen stadiums being built, so-called regional stadiums, but they have been built also selectively in some areas. We have not seen any stadium being built in Nyanza or Western region and Trans-Nzoia. We urge that the Ministry of Sports distribute these stadiums equitably. And sadly, there is only one bullfighting stadium in Kenya, in Africa actually, and is located in Malinya in Kakamega County. There is nothing which has been put there, hoping that, I hope that this money, 1.2 billion to support.
So then we save time. Honorable member, you may use the dispatch box.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika.
Kwanza nataka kupeana kongole kwa kamati ya bajeti kwa kazi ambayo walioifanya, nikijua ya kwamba si kazi ambayo kwamba ni kazi rahisi. Nimesimama kuunga mkono hoja hii, Mr. Speaker, kwa sababu kazi ya bajeti ndio inapeana mpangilio wa shughuli ambazo kwamba serikali inatakana kuziendesha. Baada ya kupitia ripoti hii, Mr. Speaker, kuna swala moja ambalo kwamba nimeliona kwamba ni la muhimu, ni lazima nilizungumzie. Bwana Speaker, wewe na mimi unajua ufahamu na umuhimu wa elimu. Nikijua ya kwamba wewe mwenyewe msomaji, uko na masters ambazo hazipungui 3, sasa unafanya pia degree ingine. Hakuna taifa lolote ambalo kwamba litaweza kuendelea ikiwa hawatawekeza kwa mpangilio wa elimu. Langu ambalo kwamba lanisikitisha katika ripoti hii au mapendekezo haya ni kilio ambacho kwamba tunakipata kila mwaka. Ikifika wakati wa bajeti, Mheshimiwa Spika, unapata kwamba hela ambayo imetengewa kitengo cha elimu ni nadhifu sana, iko hafifu. Mimi nikizungumza hivyo nina ufahamu wa ni nini ambacho kwamba tunafaidika na elimu. Ripoti hii tunaona vile ambavyo kwamba taasisi kuu zenye zimepewa hela ambayo haitoshi. Tukijua umuhimu wa elimu ni nini. Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi nikizungumza hapa, kule sehemu ya Kilifi County iko taasisi moja ambayo kwamba inaitwa Ronald Ngala University. Taasisi ile, shule ile ilizinduliwa mwaka 2003. Kufika sasa, Mheshimiwa Spika, ni miaka 16 ikiwa chuo kile hakijamalizika. Na haya yote yanajiri kwa sababu ya bajeti ambayo kwamba inapangiwa taasisi ile. Mimi mwenyewe nikikumbuka mwaka 2003 sikuwa hata kuwa najua siku moja ningalikuwa mbunge. Lakini nimekuwa na tamanio na azimio ya kuona kwamba chuo kile kinatimia, ili sio watu wa Kilifi peke yake, lakini bali watu wa Kenya mzima waweze kufaidika na taasisi ile. Tukijua ya kwamba taasisi ile imejengwa kwenye ufuo wa bahari, na mbali na kwamba kitakuwa kituo cha mafunzo, pia kitakuwa ni hoteli ambayo kwamba itakuwa ni maarufu sana, maarufu katika serikali yetu ya Kenya. Kuna mambo ambayo yanajengwa mbele ya hoteli ile ambayo kwamba yanafanana na hoteli zingine ambako ziko dunia hii, ambazo kwamba zitavutia sana watalii. Kama ambavyo kwamba unafahamu, Mheshimiwa Spika, Kenya imekuja na hii hoja ya kuboresha uwekezaji ndani ya bahari. Ufuo wa pwani ndio uko na bahari kubwa, na tunarajia kwamba ufuo ule utaleta wawekezaji wengi, watalii wengi. Hivyo basi tuko na jukumu la kuhakikisha kwamba vijana wanatayarishwa kwa kupata mafunzo mwafaka ambayo kwamba yataweza kuhakikisha wageni wanaotembea nchi hii wanapata nafasi ya mandhari na kuburudishwa na vitu ambavyo kwamba wangetaka kuviona. Hivyo basi, mbali na kwamba mimi ninaunga mkono wa ripoti hii, lalamishi yangu ni kwamba wakati tunapanga bajeti au kamati ya kupanga bajeti, ningeisihi haswa kwa upande wa elimu iweze kuweka hela za kutosha. Ni aibu kubwa, kila mwaka tunapata walimu wanagoma kwa sababu ya kwamba mishahara haitoshi au pesa za kuweza kuendelea shughuli za elimu hazitoshi. Hivyo basi ni jukumu letu sisi kama viongozi kuhakikisha kwamba ufikao wakati wa kupanga hela, tuhakikisha kwamba sekta ya elimu inatangiwa pesa ambazo kwamba zitaweza kuhakikisha kwamba yale yanayopangwa yanaweza akatimia. Mheshimiwa Spika, naunga mkono ripoti hii.
Yes, shall we have Honorable Musa, member for Samburu North.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I want also to join my colleagues in congratulating the Budget Committee for the good work they have done, even though we are, of course, we normally complain because of the implementation of every budget every year. Mr. Speaker, I want to, on the onset, I want to express my displeasure on the issue of allocating money to the health sector. Why? Because in where I come from, Samburu North, and Samburu County in general, we are facing a very serious crisis when it comes to sickness of our people. The distance of hospitals that can help our people to get treated is very far. Nairobi, Nakuru. There are not good health facilities in Samburu that can assist the sick. We do expect this particular budget to address the level 5 hospitals, because that is the nearest health facility that can assist people in northern Kenya. The ones in the district, in the county, the ones in the sub-county like Baragoi, sub-county hospital, would like it to be improved. There are equipment that have been put there that can assist if they are implemented, if they are made to work. But they are just dumped there and there are no facility, there are no resources that can actually make these facilities to be utilized fully and address the issue of healthcare in those areas. So we use a lot of money every single time to transport sick people to 450 kilometers from Maralal to this place, or to Nakuru. And leave alone that, even most of our people, because they are poor, they are unable to pay bills, they are unable to pay fare, and even to upkeep for the sick that are brought there. So if this equipment can be improved, they can be utilized, and theaters can be opened, we'll actually go along to reduce the healthcare. Mr. Speaker, there is a lot of consultation by the majority leader and the budget committee members. Please intervene so that they can be also heard.
All the members, that consultation can continue, but at a lower.
Yeah, so Mr. Speaker, thank you so much, but I would appeal to majority leader also not to lead this consultation so loudly. So, Mr. Speaker, the other issue is about food security. In northern Kenya, and particularly Samburu County, we are always being faced by drought. Every now and then, even the recent one which was there. And we continue begging to Ministry of Devolution to provide enough food for the vulnerable people during drought season. I'm sure even in Laikipia, part of Laikipia is so dry. So, again, counties are unable, and sometimes there is no funding. Whenever we go to the Ministry of Devolution and Social Program, we are told budget has not been provided by the Treasury. They also go begging. So this particular budget, I hope it has addressed the issue of food security for the entire process. Secondly, also, Mr. Speaker, the money for dams, the money for equalization, this money would have gone along to provide water for irrigation. Again, we are now seven years down the line since the promulgation of the Constitution. And Article 204 of the Constitution have deliberately put money in the budget for equalization fund. For the 7 financial years, we have only realized release of this money once, only once. What is happening with the rest of the money, the funds that were allocated? And even this type particular, why allocate funds in a budget and then you fail to release them for the purpose which they were intended for? So I hope again this particular budget will lead now to release of equalization fund for those counties that are supposed to benefit for this particular fund. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to, because I see that the light is already on, I want to say thank you so much, but I want us to be vigilant to ensure that the budget is completely, the money that is put in the budget is utilized, is released. We stop bureaucracy of actually curtailing the release of funds for the purposes which were intended for. Thank you so much.
Honorable Tandi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to support the Budget and Appropriations report. Mr. Speaker, I want to make a few remarks. One, this country is experiencing food insufficiency. And Mr. Speaker, if you check in the recent past, there have been pictures all over in the media of Kenyans dying of hunger, Kenyans dying of shortage of water. And so, Mr. Speaker, in this budget, and as a parliament, we must ensure that we run a budget that does not expose Kenyans. And that is the reason, Mr. Speaker, I want to support the resolution in this committee report that we give special allocation to relief food under Ministry of Devolution, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you realize that the government has been trying to resolve food crisis and food insufficiency in the country by way of going through contingency fund. But, Mr. Speaker, we have been told that the process of getting resources from the contingency fund is not very easy. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, you find that whereas the President would tell the Treasury to give out resources, to sort out relief food challenges, it takes a long time, Mr. Speaker, and by the time these resources are availed, a lot of Kenyans have begun to die. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that in this budget, we must allocate resources to sort out relief food challenges. And, Mr. Speaker, today, there are sections of Kenya who suffer food insufficiency, whether there is rain or not. And this large section of Kenya include places in Nyanza, actually across the country. So, Mr. Speaker, it is very shameful that we are a parliament making a budget, and in the end, we have Kenyans dying because of hunger, Mr. Speaker. So I think this is a very important allocation which we really need to support. The second issue, Mr. Speaker, is misuse or abuse of Article 223 by the executive. Mr. Speaker, Article 223, its intention is to help the country address emergencies and calamities. But, Mr. Speaker, we have cases where this article has been abused by Treasury allocating resources that ideally should not fall under this particular article. We have a case where, Mr. Speaker, resources have been allocated for traveling, for luxury, for holidays, and most recently, Mr. Speaker, we saw SRC buying fuel guzzlers under a budget item which was not appropriated. And, Mr. Speaker, the argument they have given us is that they used Article 223. Mr. Speaker, as Parliament, we must be very vigilant and stop the executive from misusing or abusing this article to spend resources which this Parliament has not allocated. Mr. Speaker, the other issue which I want to say is that this Parliament appropriates resources to ministries and departments that ideally are not involved in implementing development projects. An example, Mr. Speaker, is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The budget for Foreign Affairs, Mr. Speaker, has been going up. This financial year, we have given them so much resources. But, Mr. Speaker, we do not go back to check what value we get as a people from some of these allocations. Mr. Speaker, if you look at Foreign Affairs Ministry, Mr. Speaker, this is a very important ministry because we have a department in charge of we have economic diplomacy. And, Mr. Speaker, from where I sit, economic diplomacy is very important because this is the department that should be actually telling us what are the resources we have received because of our diplomacy, because of our foreign relations activities. But, Mr. Speaker, this department is not performing because these people hire people who are not experts. They hire people based on ethnicity, based on chronism, Mr. Speaker, based on tribalism. And, Mr. Speaker, we must call on the CS for Foreign Affairs that in the future we want to see this particular ministry performing. And I think the department in charge of overseeing this ministry must, at the end of this financial year, tell us what are the gains we have made from the resources we have given to this ministry. I think it's very important, and the CS must also know that we want to have competent people representing us in the various foreign missions so that we get value for the resources we have given them. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, I must say that we are giving so much resources to departments that are already devolved. If you look at the resources we are given to health, vis-a-vis what we have given to county governments.
To my right now, Honorable Dawood Rahim.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I want to support this budget proposal. And Mr. Speaker, I want to say that it is good the way the whole report is, Mr. Speaker, but I think we need to interrogate the CS together with the national government, the executive, in that the budget deficit, Mr. Speaker, keeps on going up every year. And we need to put the executive in check, because when we have such a big budget deficit, Mr. Speaker, the end result is we crowd out the individual borrowers, and that way we cannot even service our loans and all the other things. Mr. Speaker, I congratulate His Excellency the President on Madaraka Day when he said regarding pending bills. Mr. Speaker, it is very, very important that we bring to Parliament the PFM Act, we change it so that pending bills are no longer than 3 months, and if it is more than 3 months, then they should be paying interest on all pending bills. Because, Mr. Speaker, our people out there are having a problem servicing their loans, their properties are being auctioned, and a lot of people have even committed suicide because they cannot face the creditors out there. So, Mr. Speaker, we need to come to a conclusion on pending bills. Mr. Speaker, regarding completion of projects, it is very important. We have got many stalled projects. But, Mr. Speaker, in the spirit of completing projects, we should not be putting money into white elephants, because there are projects which require so much money, and if we allocate money to those projects, then we are just putting it down the hole. Mr. Speaker, conditional grants to hospitals, it is very important for the national government to do an audit of the money which has been given to hospitals, especially, Mr. Speaker, Meru County Hospital, Meru Level 5 Hospital. Mr. Speaker, a lot of money goes to that hospital. And the other day, they have broken an incinerator when they don't even have a plan to make another one. And how do you go about those kind of things? Mr. Speaker, we've got equipment which is lying there, which cannot be, nobody is there to take care of it. And Mr. Speaker, health services are deteriorating. Like last month we had somebody die because the generator was not working. Mr. Speaker, we cannot have those kind of things happening in this day and age, and Meru is not a small place. It's a very big place. The level 5 is catering for more than 5 to 6 counties, and it's like a referral hospital. So, Mr. Speaker, we need to think about that as well. Mr. Speaker, we need to increase funding for TVETs, because TVETs are the way to go in this country, and I believe the 4 billion which has been given, I would even request the chair of budget in future, we should be giving them more money for TVET so that we can do the industrialization through there, because that's the way to go. Mr. Speaker, the money which was allocated to emergency funds for roads, which was removed, I believe we need to give more money to the roads so that at least we can do our roads which were damaged by the rains. And Mr. Speaker, we need even now to see the roads which were passed in the previous parliament.
Order, Honorable Dawood. I know you have a remainder of 1 minute, but I want to remind the House 2 things. One is that the House will remember that the debate on the report of the Budget and Appropriations Committee takes 3 sitting days. And pursuant to a resolution of this House, if you remember, on February 13, 2019, the mover, at the end of the 3-day sitting days, the mover must have 15 minutes to reply. And that is critical. We are 13 minutes to the rise of the House. So at that point, inevitably, we must now give the chair to reply. Honorable Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Kioni is volunteering to act as Speaker and telling Honorable Dawood his 1 minute has now been taken away. But Honorable Speaker, in response to many of the issues that have been raised by members, let me just take this opportunity first to thank members for the time they have taken, one, to scrutinize the estimates as tabled and go through the report and respond to issues that are contained in our report. And thank all the members who have contributed and for their very invaluable inputs into the debate. Honorable Speaker, a number of issues have been raised, and one of the issues I would want to touch on is the issue of public participation. And a lot of members have asked the criteria that has been used to identify, one, the counties to be visited, and identification of projects. And it's good, Honorable Speaker, to make clear that, one, we developed a framework at the beginning of last year, or towards the end of 2017, on how we will conduct public hearings, and it is this framework that we've been following, which first identified, since the inception of the new constitution that obligated the Budget and Appropriations Committee, and indeed the House, to do public hearings. We identified all the counties that have been visited since the inception of this particular concept in our constitution in the 11th Parliament, and we last year visited 12 out of the counties that had never been visited. We were left with about 7 counties, Honorable Speaker, that had not been visited. 19 counties had not been visited since 2013. And last year we covered 12 of those counties. This year we have covered 6 out of the counties, and we only remain with Tana River County that is yet to be covered. And what we are doing, once we cover those 6 counties, we also identified another 6 counties that had not, that were last visited in the year 2013. Next year, we will cover Tana River County, and another 11 counties that were last visited in the year 2014, and possibly in the year 2015. Then we will repeat those that were covered in 2016 and 2017, before the lapse of this session of Parliament. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, that was the criteria that we have used. On identification of projects, it is largely based on submissions by members of the public because it is public hearings. I am aware, Honorable Speaker, as has been mentioned by, I think, one member from Kirinyaga County, that some of the counties that we covered last year, including Kirinyaga County, the entire budget line of 1.2 billion shillings. Remember, we have a budget line of 100 million shillings per county, that, which was taken away during Supplementary 1. In the report, Honorable Speaker, members will note that we have allocated 2.4 billion shillings, which covers those 12 counties that were covered last year and the 12 that we have covered this year. Honorable Speaker, the other issue that has seems to have generated a lot of heat is on the issue of reallocations by departmental committees. And it's important, Honorable Speaker, and it's unfortunate that the House is rather empty at this time, because people raise issues and walk out and don't listen to the responses, and therefore are not well informed. The issues of reallocation proposed by departmental committees, Honorable Speaker, are very weighty issues. And largely, we endeavored to agree with a number of departmental committees based on the facts that they presented before the Budget and Appropriations Committee through their chairs, and also based on the resources availability within those departments. There has been an issue that has been raised on the by the Health Committee members. And a lot of reallocations were done, Honorable Speaker. And it's important to point out where these reallocations were coming from, Honorable Speaker, because it is this House that adopted the Division of Revenue Bill earlier this year, Honorable Speaker. This Division of Revenue Bill, we are still in mediation with the Senate, and we are yet to conclude, and hopefully we should be able to conclude this year. One of the reallocations that the Health Committee had sought to do or to reallocate is the 4.326 billion that has been appropriated in the Division of Revenue Bill going to level 5 hospitals. Honorable Speaker, as a Budget and Appropriations Committee, we would not have allowed money that has already been appropriated in the Division of Revenue Bill to then be reallocated to other uses, including some hospitals that would otherwise benefit from other resources. And it's important, Honorable Speaker, because we looked at the reallocations that had been proposed, some to Kenyatta National Hospital, some to Mathare Referral Hospital, and others to particular dispensaries here and there, small hospitals across the county. And Honorable Speaker, it is important to mention that these particular hospitals, the ministry has asserted, the National Treasury has asserted, that they indeed have plans to allocate resources from the Universal Health Coverage funds under the sports fund. You are aware, Honorable Speaker, again, following regulations that were passed by this House, that there is money under the sports fund that will be appropriated into those particular hospitals, and therefore they will not suffer, as has been said. Honorable Speaker, the issue that was raised is on a summative report being tabled or being given to the departmental committee, and they sought to reallocate money again, the 4.6 billion that has been earmarked for rollout of UHC in 43, in the other 43 counties, Honorable Speaker. And they pegged their reallocation on the lack of a summative report on how this has been rolled out in the 4 counties. And the position of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, the National Treasury, and the Line Ministry, Honorable Speaker, was that if we are to allow the reallocation of the 4.6 billion at this particular stage, Honorable Speaker, it means if the report comes in July, or even at the end of July, or even in December, in between the financial year, then we would have to identify resources then to roll out the universal health care across the 43 counties. The Health Committee did not identify where we would be able to get those resources, and therefore are leaving it to the Budget and Operations Committee to identify where to find these resources. And with the limited resources we have, Honorable Speaker, the best we could do was to disallow the reallocation of the UHC money at this stage. But if you read the report, we have given this money to the ministry with a condition that they must give a summative report to the Departmental Committee for Health. And therefore, the Health Committee still has an opportunity, probably during Supplementary 1, if the ministry is not able to give them a summative report that satisfies them. Then at that stage, Honorable Speaker, we can consider whether we can reallocate resources at that point. However, if we were to reallocate now and not identify where else we'll be able to get money from, if the summative report is brought in December, January, or even in October or November, then we'll be left in a quagmire since we will not have resources to roll out universal health care. And Honorable Speaker, we are all aware that UHC is one of the key pillars of the Big Four agenda that the Jubilee government and President Uhuru Kenyatta are implementing, and therefore want to plead, especially the members of the Departmental Committee for Health, to understand that in view of the limited resources, we were not able to allow those 2 reallocations in that time. Honorable Speaker, the issue of budget implementation, a number of members have spoken to it. And it is indeed true, I want to agree with a number of members, that we do pass budgets in this House. And I remember, I think it is Honorable Otiendo Omolo who mentioned the case example of CDF, where a number of members still are at about 50% of disbursements. As much as we understand there are challenges with exchequer releases, Honorable Speaker, I think I want to call upon the Committee for Implementation, and I can see Honorable Abur, who is a very active member of this committee, to ensure that they indeed follow up on budget implementation. But it's also a challenge, Honorable Speaker, to our departmental committees, that the moment we pass these budgets, the role to oversight budget implementation also lies with the departmental committees, and they need, on a quarterly basis, if not every 2 months, to be able to call their accounting officers and their cabinet secretaries and get reports on how the budget is being implemented, because it is those reports that we also allow them an opportunity to be able to interrogate the Supplementary 1 estimates when they are tabled, and be able to reallocate resources based on how well the departments, ministries, and agencies of government are absorbing resources that have been allocated to them. Honorable Speaker, I think in the interest of time, I think I should end there, but I want to urge members of this House to please do support and adopt this report as tabled by the Budget and Appropriations Committee. It was after a rigorous almost 3 weeks of very busy time, Honorable Speaker, and we can only do justice to many of us who spent a lot of time in departmental committees, the chairs of committees who I want to take this opportunity to sincerely thank because they took a lot of their time, almost 2.5 days, to be with us at Hilton Garden Inn to present their budgets for each of their respective ministries, departments, and agencies, Honorable Speaker. Therefore, I do want to urge members to do agree with the committee as proposed in the report and also support us as we move towards publication of the appropriations bill, both for this and also for supplementary too. And with those many remarks, Honorable Speaker, I beg to reply.
Yes, what is it, Honorable Jeremiah Kioni?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Standing order number 53 gives you some discretion as to when you can put the question, and 53.3 specifically allows you to postpone the putting of the question. Mr. Speaker, I request that you postpone the putting of the question to a later time when circumstances do allow.
Very well, Honorable Kioni, I completely agree with you. We shall pay putting the question on that particular motion report to a subsequent time. Honorable members, the time being a few seconds to 1 p.m., this House started adjourned till Wednesday, 12th June 2019 at 2:30 p.m.